Inside is a game about. Whoops, looks like I forgot to make a terrible joke. Oh well, let's start over. Inside is a game about platforming and solving puzzles. Not in the way that you can jump super high like Mario. In fact, your jump is more like a Fable hop, with barely enough height to make it over a small gap. That's because the character you control skipped leg day. It's also not puzzle solving in the way you can push things across a grid and they slot right into place. No, it's more like mind controlling a bunch of barely alive humans to stand on a panel to open a door. Yeah, okay, let me describe this game again. Inside is a game about running from authorities, hiding from horrors, long lines, dead pigs, darkness, going down and down and down, running, morally ambiguous puzzles, and the best sound design I have ever been graced with hearing. Inside starts you in a forest. It seems normal, if a little eerie, but you do what you do in most games and you start moving around and testing your controls. You can only move left, right, and jump, and as I've said, the character's jump is pathetic. As you move through the forest, there are some basic puzzles to complete, teaching you that you can interact with the environment in certain ways, but there's also some men you have to stealth past. It is a relatively simple stealth section until they notice you, and you being noticed as a scripted event, you can't do anything about it, so you just have to run and hide and run and hide, and then after a few minutes of this, their dogs force you to jump into a lake. You then have to swim across that lake without being noticed, so you have to swim underneath the men's flashlights and escape from them. This teaches you that 1, you can swim, and 2, you're not a fish and you can and probably will drown. After that anxiety attack, the game makes you just walk through a cornfield, but your view's obstructed, and I was fully expecting a jump scare at this point, but no, the game chills out for a bit. So, after the corn maze, field, whatever, you make it into a farmhouse, and you feel kinda safe there, like it's the first proper building you've even seen. And there's these little chicks that are following you around, you need to shoot at a machine, and it's a cute little light-hearted fun puzzle, and just as you think this game is about to lighten up, the game says, no, fuck you, dead pigs. A lot of dead pigs. So you walk through the farm, that little bit of safety you felt replaced with just unease. The farm is clearly abandoned and something clearly killed all the pigs. Except that pig. Oh no. There's still a pig who survived. Against the odds. Sort of like you, but that doesn't matter. You need to use him like any old platform to put on this mind control gap thingy that's in the ceiling. It's used to control other people, and not in a goofy, cartoony way. It's bleak, unnatural, and it just feels wrong. Like these people are tools, not actually people. But I just used them to complete the puzzle and decided not to think about it too much. After you get out the farm, you start moving into a rundown industrialised city, but before you can properly get into the city, you see this. This line of people that seems to stretch on forever. And it stretching on forever would be creepy enough, but what's worse than the line is the people in the line. They're all in sync with each other's movements, and they seem nearly dead. They don't even notice you. They're like the men in the barn, but the men in the barn were being controlled by you. So, who's controlling these people on the line? It's unnerving, but you push on through the city, completing puzzles, waiting for another tense chase, and looking for secrets. And there's not a tense chase sequence. Sure, there's some robots, but there's nothing bad. I lied, you fall into the line and you have to walk in sync with it. This is the most butt-clenchingly tense moment in the entire game. For me at least, because if you don't act in sync with the line, you die. What's interesting about this line is there's people surveying you while you walk in the line. It shows there are actually people in this city acting of their own accord. It was oddly comforting for me because up until this point, all you've seen in the city are robots and the line. So after passing some weird test things, the people surveying you realise, wait, you've got a colour on your shirt. so they send a dog after you. A bit odd since there are multiple people there that could have chased you, but it's not that big of a deal, so you escape from the dog and move on. After this, there's a really cool puzzle where you have to control a guy to move you across this sort of minecart track. And what I like about this puzzle is you have to get the original guy you're controlling to control his own guy, who you're still controlling. It's a nice little expansion on the mind control mechanic, but then you get to the part that to progress, you need to open up this hatch and you need to drop through it. I consider this the point of no return, because up until this point you could logically return to the starting area. I mean, you can't, but theoretically you could if, the developers didn't block you off. But anyway, from this point on you're stuck in the underground, and the game goes from having a really oppressive atmosphere to having a really oppressive atmosphere, but underground. The underground and the little oddities in the underground are pretty much the rest of the game, so I hope you like them, and if you do, well, good for you. There's no joke here, by the way, I just thought I'd say that. I honestly can't think of many big moments in the first underground part. It feels like it's there just because. Not that it's bad, it's just as engaging as the rest of the game, but there aren't really any new mechanics introduced, and it's probably the most forgettable bit in the game. There is this one part where you have to pull some wooden beams off a door while a pack of ravenous dogs chase you, and it is a really cool moment, but if you die you're treated to this lovely animation. One thing you might start to notice at this point is death animations are really brutal, especially the dog ones, although the robots are a very notable exception to this since the way they kill you seems kinda goofy compared to the realisticness of everything else anyway. It's like the humans are more cold and calculated than actual machines. Like if you get caught by people before the submarine section, who, side note, probably act more like humans than any other humans I've seen, keep that statement in mind when I tell you, as soon as they see you, they force you down on your knees and crush your windpipe against a metal bar. It's pretty brutal. But if you get past them, you get to the submarine section. Woohoo! I don't have to hold my breath underwater now, and I can move so much faster, and I have this neat little boost move, and this is probably the largest space in the entire game, and it's terrifyingly beautiful. You can actually go through it quite fast. All you need to do is go down to the right, but I didn't do that. I looked around the entire room. I'm not sure why. It wasn't because I was looking for a secret. I knew there wasn't one there. But there was something in my mind that was going, but what if? And I think that's what this area is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you question if what you're doing is worth it. After all, you're tiny compared to this void, and it just makes you think if you should even be looking for collectibles, because in the game it makes no sense. Unless you know about the secret ending, but I digress. After that, you make your way through more underwater segments using the sub's little boost mechanic, and there's a really cool puzzle where you have to get back out of the sub, and it forces you to explore outside of your comfort zone, so you can open a door and jump the sub through it. Oh yeah, the sub can leap out the water. It's kinda goofy, like the way the robots kill you. It brings back the idea that the humans are more cold and calculated than machines. Then after that puzzle you meet some mermaids. Oh yeah, there are mermaids. Yeah, the mermaids will attack you on sight, unless you shine the light of your sub on them. But if you use your boost move, it renders you immobile and you can't shine your light on them for a couple of seconds. It's a really good risk-reward system, since if you want to progress faster, or at all sometimes, you need to use the boost, but use it at the wrong time and you're dead. The mermaids are never properly explained. Why they came to be and their purpose is also never explained, but my theory is there's some sort of genetically engineered weapon that's gone wrong. I think this is because you don't find any mermaid until you start finding drowned bases and labs. Plus, some mermaids are behind observation windows, and there's a thing later on in the game that allows you to breathe underwater. But that's just a theory. The submarine through all the mermaid segments feels like a safety net for obvious reasons, but eventually you have to put that behind you and move on. puzzle is possibly the most uncomfortable in the entire game. To progress, you need to collect enough of the mind control guys and place them on a platform to open a big door that seems to have something bashing against it at irregular intervals. There's a counter that tells you how many more people you need until the door opens. There are a few people around the immediate area, but there's nowhere enough to open the door, and you don't have the mind control hat. So you explore a bit and you go down, way down. You'll eventually find a way to get this mind control thing, and when you do, the cable it's connected to breaks. This is where it gets really uncomfortable, because now the control humans surround you. You can't even see your character, and it's awful. These people have always been disconnected from you in previous puzzles, like in a place you can't reach or just in the background. It's as if the game is forcing you to confront the horridness of the situation, and the way they follow your character around is so zombie-like, it verges on being like a horror game. You just want to get away from them, but you can't. You need them to progress. So I did, and the best part of the entire puzzle was when, just for a minute, I didn't have any of them following me. I was actually relieved when I got away from them, but at the same time I felt vulnerable. I no longer had any more help and no more protection, and no matter how unsettling those mind control people were, I still needed them. This small section didn't last long though, because before long you find some more bodies and you head back up. You do some more puzzles, get some more bodies, until you just need one more. You find that one more dead. But the counter doesn't care. It can't tell whether you're alive or not, so it opens the door, and you go through it, leave the mind control people behind, and move onwards. Welcome to the bridge. Here you'll be blown to pieces a lot. You know, the bridge would be quite normal if it wasn't for the incredibly high-powered shockwave that blasts down at every few seconds, ripping you limb from limb if you're not behind cover. This area is probably my favourite, mechanically speaking. The now constant threat of death adds a prolonged tension to the gameplay that, originally, was only there in short bursts. Honestly, there isn't too much to talk about apart from the mechanics, so for the sake of not causing me pain, I'll keep the next bit short and gloss over a few details. After that, guess what? The mermaids are back, and you have no submarine. Good luck! You're gonna have to do multiple puzzles being chased by mermaids, so I sure do hope you can deal with high amounts of stress. That sums up this section mostly, but after that you're just doing some platforming when the thing you're platforming on breaks, and you get attacked by a mermaid. You sigh, think, oh what bullcrap, and wait for the screen to fade to black so you can retry the segment. But it doesn't fade to black, and you continue struggling against the mermaid, until eventually you fall limp, and still it doesn't turn black, and you just keep on going down, and down, and down. Eventually you reach the bottom, and all of a sudden you can breathe underwater, so with your newfound ability, you move on. The next few areas are noticeably less run down than everywhere else, with fully functioning machinery and the occasional person popping up in them, like actual people, not just controlled ones. Again, I'm glossing over quite a bit, but this video is long enough and my sanity is slowly dwindling down to nothing. There are these weird gravity-defying pools of water which have controlled people in them, but apart from that it's pretty standard. As standard as you get in a game like this. You'll soon get to the final area of the game, which is a research facility / military base kind of shtick. You make your way through the base and you notice there are loads of people running in the one direction. You eventually find out what they're all running towards, and it's a big tank. Not a military tank like a fish tank, but bigger. At this point no one seems to care about you, no one chases you down. Even when you're right up against a tank, all you get is a few weird looks. At this point I became more or less obsessed with finding out what the hell was in that tank, so much so that I rushed through the rest of the game, and when I finally got to the tank, I found this. A horrible abomination of flesh and limbs, pulsating and just generally doing unpleasant things like something straight out of a horror game. Now all the people on the outside of the glass tank are looking at you. They seem concerned, but no one really tries to stop you. You go around freeing the thing, and just as you're about to free it, you're now the abomination made of flesh and parts of other humans. You go to move, and you pulse about in the tank, moving like everything hurts, because it most likely does. You start to break open the tank, and now the people on the other side start panicking. You break the glass, presumably killing or at the very least injuring some people, and you rampage through the facility, leaving a trail of destruction in your wake. This is the first time in the game that allows you to feel powerful. You can rip open doors, and the sight of you makes most people flee in terror. But despite that, you're constantly moaning in pain. You constantly have to break through glass and other things that are clearly hurting you. But you go on getting smaller and smaller as bits of you are literally torn away, and the pain only seems to mount until you break into an office and there's just one man. He seems to be the one in charge, and he's cowering in fear. For just a brief moment, you see yourself like everybody else does, a monster of limbs, an amalgamation, possibly hundreds of other people. But you need to move forward, so you do. And you kill the person who is presumably in charge. You continue your rampage, and the other people in the facility seem to be helping you now. They're opening doors and activating things you can. Eventually it becomes clear that they're not actually helping you, but they're just directing you to the back door, and there's nothing you can do about it. Finally, you get to the end of the facility. You exit, you fall down, and then you're outside again. But you can do nothing. You have no control over what remains of your character. What does remain though, well, at this point you've lost so much of your original mass, you now resemble a pile of dead bodies that I think are supposed to look like the dead pigs at the start of the game. For some reason I think that. It's probably just a me thing, but if you see it, that means I'm not going insane, right? Right? Okay, back to serious analysis. I think not being able to move as you look over the wonderful sights puts the sort of I won, but at what cost idea into your head, except you didn't win crap. You've not exactly stopped them in the facility. It's not like they're going to stop being evil or free all the mind control people just because you trashed their place. All you've really done is minorly inconvenience them. So instead of that, the last question in your mind is just, why? What was the point if all I can do is watch the credits roll? Alright, now we're in theory territory. Because of the way Inside Story is structured, it leaves almost everything up to interpretation. Like, did I really get killed with a dog right there? Or was it all in my head? Okay, maybe actually I did leave quite a lot not up to interpretation, but some of it was up to interpretation. I haven't looked at many theories myself, but one I have seen is that it's a metaphor about consumerism and capitalism, and how humans are willing to give up their individuality for essentially nothing, and also the 1%, but I don't really agree with the 1% part, since most of what would be the 1% in this case are just office workers. I have my own theory, but it's more about the story and not about deep metaphors. My theory is people in charge knew you were going to break into the base and orchestrated the full thing. Okay, maybe not the full thing, but at least since the forest, because that's when they actually first find out about you. My reasons for this are mostly being used to feed my ever-expanding ego, and they're all in my head. Honestly, have you seen this video? I mean, it looks like an ego project, doesn't it? I mean, just listen to the way I'm speaking. Yeah, you can tell I have very low self-esteem and a very large ego. But apart from that, there are actually a few things in the game that support my theory. Like how in the city, after the part where you have to walk in the line and they only send a single dog after you, despite there clearly being multiple people there. I think at this point they're testing you by just sending you an easy challenge and seeing if you can overcome it. After this point, you meet very little resistance until you get near the final area of the game. And even when you do get into the military base / science lab, people just see you and go, it's just a kid wearing a red shirt. Who cares? Another reason is when you become the horrible flesh monster thing, They help you, but what's more is they observe you like you're just an experiment, which is backed up by the fact that all you really do in their base is kill their presumable boss and trash a few things. You don't even do that much damage, apart from killing their boss, but I'm not even sure that is their boss. Surely their boss would be more heavily guarded and would have a nicer office. I think it's just like the head of a branch or something, or maybe just a really unlucky employee that gets stood up. And even if he was their boss, he's probably replaceable. If the system these people run on is as efficient as it seems, there should be multiple warm bodies waiting in line to be the next leader. So yeah, that's my theory, and if you disagree with it, you are factually wrong. So in conclusion, what did I learn? Well, I learned that 1, I should probably see a therapist about my ego, and 2, I am bad at analysing serious games.